All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Today, we're going to be in Unit 7, World War II, Lesson 1, The Rise of Dictators, Part 2. This is the second lesson in our World War II unit. We're going to pick up where we left off last time, so make sure you take out your journals and you're writing this stuff down. We're talking about the rise of the Nazi Party and Adolf Hitler in Germany in the years between World War I and World War II. Because these dictators that we're talking about, they're going to lead to the Second World War, which is the biggest war in human history. And of course, America will play a very large role in that war. Hitler rises to power in 1933 and then seizes all control and becomes a totalitarian or total dictator by 1934. If you ever need to remember what a dictator is, just take the first part of that word. There you go. Okay. So Nazism is very similar to fascism. And remember, Hitler's borrowing a lot of his ideas from his good close buddy, just kidding, Benito Mussolini. Mussolini rhymes with linguini, tortellini, all these fettuccine. There's the third one. And I think I once had a class that came up with a fourth one as well. But Mussolini is the Italian dictator. And fascism, remember, is where you have this ultra nationalism, like, yes, my country the best, all that stuff. Kind of like almost like twisted, wrong patriotism. That's like what nationalism is. You believe your country should be put above all others, and you will do whatever it takes to make sure that that happens. Nazism combines that idea of fascism, that ultra nationalism, with some other ideas as well, mainly who's to blame and who they are against. And so they have this ultra nationalism, this fascism, building up the military sense. But then the Nazi Party is also extremely anti Semitic, which means they are against Jewish people. Remember that Hitler was blaming the Jews for all of Germany's troubles. Accusing the Weimar Republic of having Jewish ties to Jewish banks and Jewish businesses, and the Jews are why Germany is starving and everything else, and having to pay back all these reparations from the Treaty of Versailles. The Nazi Party also combines ideas of eugenics, social Darwinism, and anti-communism as well, which we'll see in the build-up to the Holocaust and the final solution, which is, of course, as you may have seen in middle school, like with the movie The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. I know some of you probably watched it. That is going to be where you have the death camps, the gas chambers, and all that famous stuff with the Holocaust. Eugenics remembers the idea that you can breed a better human being. And in America, we did this with forced sterilization of people in asylums. And we also did it through marriage laws forbidding, like, say, the marriage of blacks and whites. In Nazi Germany, they're going to take it a step further, not just sterilization, where you prevent somebody from being able to reproduce, taking out their reproductive organs, but also killing those that they did not want to see reproduce. And so this will lead to the term undesirables. And Hitler basically, when he was in jail, like I mentioned last time, in prison for a bombing that the Nazi Party did as they were rising to power in 1924, while he's in jail, he writes this book called Mein Kampf. Mein Kampf. And it means my struggle in German. And it's a bestseller. And in his book, where the bad guy of a movie, the villainous character, like, reveals his secret dastardly plot, and then he, like, spells out the whole thing to the hero, and then the hero beats him and stuff. Well, Hitler, the big villain, he basically reveals his entire agenda, like what he wants to do, in his book Mein Kampf. And he talks about wanting to create Lebensraum, which is this German word meaning living space. An elbow room. It's a nice, very nice way of putting it. You can see in this picture here, Lebensraum, Hitler wants to take over all of Eastern Europe to basically make it a playground for his ideal German race. He called them the master race, the Übermensch, the super people, or the Aryan race. And the Aryan race were supposed to be personifying the best features of humanity, the perfect German person. So they were very strong, good muscle tone, tall, good bone structure, and they would be blonde haired and blue eyed. And that was the perfect person. Now, of course, Hitler himself was none of those things. He was so scrawny that in the First World War, when he finally, as this little Austrian boy, was able to get into the German military, he wasn't even allowed to have a gun in his hands. That's why he was a messenger boy running messages from the trenches back to headquarters and stuff. And by the way, he was in the sights of a British officer who could have shot him with his rifle, but chose not to because Hitler was so scrawny and unarmed. He took pity on this boy during World War I. Think of how the course of human history could have changed if that British soldier had killed Hitler in World War I. But regardless, Hitler's talking about his whole dastardly plot in his book. He talks about wanting to make Eastern Europe, part of Germany, take it over, to allow his Aryan race, his master race of German people, have more room to grow and expand, make Germany great again, he talks about. And to do this, because there are obviously a lot of people already living in Eastern European nations, such as Poland and Czechoslovakia and Hungary and Romania and so on, Hitler just says we should just kind of get rid of all those people. And that will eventually turn into the Holocaust and genocide and the final solution. But that is his whole plan. He talks about what he was going to do, and then he did it. And so remember that Nazism is like fascism. It combines the ultra-militaristic state with the totalitarian, authoritarian dictator, the ultra-nationalism, your country being put above all others, along with racist views on humanity, including specifically targeting Jewish people. And of course, Hitler's own grandparent was a Jew, and he was brown-haired and brown-eyed and all of this other stuff. A lot of what Hitler is doing, keep in mind, like, how does he have this extreme hypocrisy if he's like this cunning person and super ambitious? Well, it's because he is political and he is ambitious and he wants to rise to power. And fascism and Nazism, these are the vehicles to do that, by basically creating a monster for people to get scared of and rally around, like a boogeyman, that being, in this case, the Jewish person. You give somebody for people to fear, and through their fear and terror, you're able to assume power. It's political. Hitler would practice his speeches in the mirror, for hours and hours before he would deliver. He would get every expression just perfectly. He would get the tone that he wanted just perfectly. And then as he was giving his speeches, he would rise and rise and rise in tone. And so by the end, he's going, sorry, I had to, that German is angry. But yeah, he purposely did everything he was doing to rise to power, to seize power, to seize total control over Germany. And he radicalizes a small group that turns bigger and bigger as the majority kind of sits idly by and does nothing. This is how he takes over. If this sounds familiar to things happening in 2020 and now 2021 in January as I'm filming this, well, then there you go. Also, for posterity's sake, I just wanted to show y'all real briefly. I'm filming this, of course, on our snow day. Isn't it beautiful? Hold on. Can you see the snow? I don't know if y'all can see it, but yeah, there's snow outside. This never happens. This is January the 12th, or no, January the 11th, 2021. There was snow everywhere yesterday. It was beautiful. All right, so that's what's going on. Now, as this is happening, Hitler, when he rises to power, he begins to break many of the terms in the Treaty of Versailles. At first, he's going to start to remilitarize, which broke what the Treaty of Versailles said. They reduced the German military. Now he's going to raise it back up. He is going to retake the Rhineland and start to not only militarize it, but, put factories back on it and everything else. And then he's going to annex the Sudetenland, because he said it was mainly German-speaking people anyway. He wants to unite all German-speaking people, something he talks about in Mein Kampf, my struggle. And then he annexes the Anschluss, he annexes Austria, which was his native homeland, also full of many German-speaking people. And so he's doing all this and breaking the terms in the Treaty of Versailles, and the world entity, the world organization that was supposed to intervene and stop him was called the League of Nations. Remember, this was created from the Treaty of Versailles. And it was from our own United States President, Woodrow Wilson, that had this idea as part of his 14 points. The 14th point called for a League of Nations for countries to all mediate, talk, in order to avoid future wars. And so the League of Nations should have stood up to Hitler and stopped him from doing these things as he was, breaking all of these terms in the Treaty of Versailles and building back up his military. But it does nothing. It does nothing to stop him. At most, it basically says, that's not good, Hitler. You should stop doing that. But it fails to take any action because it really couldn't. Keep in mind, Germany itself was not part of the League of Nations. The Empire of Japan left the League of Nations. It was not part of it anymore. The United States never joined the League of Nations because even though it was our own president, Woodrow Wilson's idea, our Congress, our Senate especially, did not approve of joining a world organization at the end of World War I when we felt like our involvement in the entire war had been nothing but a mistake. And so we were not part of it. You're going to have also, of course, the Soviet Union, Russia formerly, they're going to leave it. So they're not part of it. So all the strong nations that could have been maybe doing something are going to be the aggressors or just totally not taking part at all. And the League of Nations is going to be helpless, completely helpless to do anything to stop the rise of these dictators like Hitler. And that's why Hitler and Mussolini, they're able to expand and expand throughout the 1930s. Hitler taking parts of Czechoslovakia and Austria and the Rhineland and parts of eastern Poland, on the Baltic Sea and parts of Lithuania. And then eventually he's going to annex all of Czechoslovakia. And then he has his sights set on Poland. And that will be the final straw and finally lead Britain and France to declaring war because they had a treaty with Poland, a new nation that had been created out of the Treaty of Versailles, out of the eastern parts of Germany originally. Mussolini will be expanding into Africa, and that is about all you need to know about that. Ethiopia and stuff. And there is a civil war happening in Spain in 1936. You have the dictator Francisco Franco, also a fascist, being assisted by his fascist allies, Mussolini in Italy and Hitler in Germany. And they'll be giving a lot of military resources to that civil war to basically destroy Spain. So if you're wondering where Spain is in World War II, they had already been destroyed before the war even started in their own civil war. Remember, civil war is when a country is fighting itself. All right, now let's depart Europe and go all the way east to the Empire of Japan. And recall that in 1854, Commodore Matthew Perry of the United States Navy is going to send a fleet of these big, imposing warships from the United States with these big black sails into Tokyo Harbor and force the Japanese to trade with the United States. Japan did not like this, and they knew they were at a disadvantage when it came to competing on a world stage militarily with Western powers such as the United States and England. And so Japan began to modernize. This was called the Meiji Restoration. And Japan will modernize and industrialize and build up their military into a modern fighting force. Kind of keeping their samurai tradition, but doing away with the samurai warfare. Now, instead of, all having katanas and stuff, they will be having actual rifles. They'll be trained as a modern military unit. And this transformation is completed. You could see by 1905 when you have the Russian-Japanese War and Japan able to pretty handily defeat the great Russian Empire. And it was our own President Theodore Roosevelt that negotiated that peace, the Peace of Portsmouth in Maine, 1905. But in World War I, Japan had been part of the Allied side because they were interested in acquiring German islands, German colonies in the Pacific. Remember, here's Japan in this map here. It constitutes the 4 big islands: Hokkaido, Honshu, Shikoku, Kyushu. These 4 big islands make up Japan, but it's also many hundreds and even thousands of tinier islands that are all throughout the Pacific. And they were carving out an Asian empire. They were the only Asian nation to imperialize because they were the first and one of the only ones over in Asia to industrialize, to build up factories and mass manufacturing of like weapons and goods and everything else. They were the first to be able to build a modern military and begin to take over other places in Asia. So they were like these European powers at the time. And so they were carving out a Pacific empire, taking over parts of Eastern Asia and islands in the Pacific Ocean. And because Japan is a series of islands, keep in mind that their resources are incredibly limited. So it's kind of like a catch-22, right? That the more Japan wants to expand and build their empire, the more places they will need to take over in order to get the resources for which to expand, because they'll need to get oil from elsewhere. They'll need to, to power their ships and their navy and their planes. They'll need to get more rubber from elsewhere for all their Jeeps and everything else, for all the tires. They'll need to get, all these resources from elsewhere because their islands, while being beautiful and having some things, are very limited in resources. So their conquest is to expand. Japan has long had emperors in control. It's what we call the Empire of Japan. And if you see the Japanese flag, it's the sun, the land of the rising sun. It's the red circle on a white field is their flag. But during this time, it's the Empire of Japan, right? So it's the sunbeams coming out of that red circle on their flag. So that's the Japanese flag in World War II. And kind of also thinking about those sunbeams expanding out. That's what they want to do, is expand and take over places. Japan had a parliament and a prime minister who in the lead up to World War II is going to become a military dictator almost. He was a military man who becomes the prime minister. And so that is the kind of the dictator of Japan you need to be aware of, Hideki Tojo. So Tojo right here, he is the one running the show and is part of the military that is kind of controlling Japan, calling the shots, going to be ordering Pearl Harbor, those sorts of things. The Emperor of Japan, while being the absolute leader, of course, of the Japanese people, here he is. He was pretty young in World War II. His name was Hirohito, Emperor Hirohito. He is not running the day-to-day affairs. He is sort of kind of considered like a god to the Japanese people. They'd never even, until he issues the surrender after the atomic bombs are dropped at the end of the war, the Japanese people had never even heard his voice, the voice of their godlike figure, the Sun King of Japan. And so he's kind of above all of that. And so it's Tojo that is running the show. Okay, geographically back in Europe, this is the continents of Europe, all the countries there in Europe. You remember that we have Hitler in Nazi Germany. Remember the Nazis? That's Hitler in Germany. Francisco Franco in Spain. You don't need to worry about that. Benito Mussolini in this country at the bottom of Europe. What is this country? Looks like a boot. There's the stiletto heel. That is Italia. That's Italy. And then here, this super large, the biggest country in land size, not in population because it's freezing cold in Siberia, which is all that over there. But this country is communist. It is the Soviet Union, formerly Russia, and it is led in World War II by the mass murdering sociopath with the big mustachio. That is Mr. Joseph Stalin. Killed 15 million of his own Russian people in the gulags. What does the League of Nations do as Germany, Italy, and Japan began taking over other nations? Condemn, endorse sanctions, denounces. They did a whole bunch of nothing. They were not able to stop the rise of dictators. The League of Nations fails. Britain and France, they're going to try their own stuff. You have this man right here, Neville Chamberlain, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, the United Kingdom, the English people, oi, right, English, the British, he is going to go and attempt to reason with Hitler, to negotiate with Hitler. When Hitler is taking over the Sudetenland, Neville Chamberlain is going to tell Hitler, "Oh, you should stop that, sir. I say you should stop that now, and we'll forgive it. Let bygones be bygones, you know?" I say, "Quite, quite." And Hitler says, "Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Just let me take the Sudetenland, this little, strip of land right here, and I'll be perfectly fine. Cross my heart, hope to die." And so Chamberlain's like, "Oh, okay, great. Well, sure. We were a little too harsh on you in the Treaty of Versailles anyway. It's fine. Just take that, and then we're all good." Well, then just a few months later, Hitler's going to annex Austria, the Anschluss. He says but it's my native homeland. I was Austrian, the Austrian people, just like me, we longed to be back with Germany, the father country, and all that. And so again, Chamberlain's like, "I guess, okay, all right, Hitler, you can take Austria. I understand it's your native homeland. Most Austrians speak German. I understand, all right. But no more, please, Hitler. We've come to an understanding. I thought we did. That you just take this and then no more." Appeasement. What Chamberlain is doing by caving in, by giving in to Hitler's demands, is he's trying to give Hitler what he wants so that Hitler will be content and stop. Okay, but it's not going to work, because Hitler is going to keep taking and taking and taking until he has taken everything that he wants to. Um, and that'll include Czechoslovakia, the Rhineland, and then eventually he sets his sights on all of Poland. Because remember, he's spelled out his entire dastardly plot of what he wants to do. He wants to create Lebensraum, or living space, for his master race. And to do that, he wants to take over all of Eastern Europe and wipe out all of these people. And eventually, the Western powers, Britain and France, they're going to have to stand up to him, because Hitler's a bully. That's basically what he's being, right? So the policy of appeasement, the easiest way I have for you guys to remember what it is, there's a cartoon of it, and there's Chamberlain, all excited, shaking hands with Hitler. Hitler's got like a, fingers crossed behind his back, like, "Oh yeah, I promise, this is the last thing I'll take. No more." He's lying. He'll lie to your face. Hitler was a very charming politician. He would lie and lie and lie. But appeasement, think about when you're at this grocery store with whoever, and you're checking out, and you see a mother, and maybe she's by herself with her kids, and the children are screaming, and they have all the candy in the checkout aisles, and the kids are screaming and throwing a temper tantrum, begging for that candy. And the mom she's just trying to get all her groceries, in the bags, and trying to pay. And she's super embarrassed, because like everybody's staring at her as her kids are screaming their faces off and making the scene. And people feel bad for her and stuff, but appeasement is where that mother just gives in, and she gives those screaming spoiled brats what they want, gives them, buys them their candy to shut them up, basically. And the reason why this policy of appeasement doesn't work is because the next time she goes to the store with those kids, they're going to be even worse. They're going to demand even more candy because they've gotten their way, right? And so think of Hitler like that spoiled brat, that little child throwing a temper tantrum in order to get his way. He's using his military to take over all these places next to Germany. He keeps taking more and more. And Neville Chamberlain, the British prime minister, he's like that harried mother who just wants to get Hitler to stop. So he gives in again and again and again, just creating more and more of a monster. And you could see in this famous political cartoon by Dr. Seuss, of all people. Dr. Seuss was a big proponent of fighting the Nazis. He did not like the Nazis. That's why I love Dr. Seuss. It says the appeaser. This is supposed to be Neville Chamberlain. And of course, these hydras, snake creature monsters, they're Nazi Germany. Adolf Hitler. It's got the swastika, the Nazi symbol on them. And it says, "Remember, one more lollipop and then you can all go home." And of course, you think these monsters are going to stop after they take that one lollipop? No, they're going to take all those lollipops and then they're going to eat the guy. That's what happens. And that's why the appeasement policy is going to fail. It's going to fail spectacularly, just like the League of Nations itself is going to fail. And Neville Chamberlain is going to find himself voted out as the Prime Minister of the Parliament of the United Kingdom, and a new Prime Minister will be elected named Winston Churchill. And this is when at the beginning of World War II, when Hitler invades Poland, the British people are in their darkest hour. Hitler basically is able to very quickly take over Poland, and then he turns his sights on France. France, who had fought against Germany for 4 years during World War I, falls in a matter of months to the German military. Paris falls and surrenders. And Britain finds themselves basically the only Western power, the only European power left fighting this giant Nazi monster of Nazi Germany. So this was the darkest hour for the British when they had their famous Battle of Britain above the skies of England and all that. All right. And that's where Winston Churchill Winston Churchill has a great voice. So here's my terrible Winston Churchill impression for y'all to enjoy. We shall fight on the land, we shall fight on the seas, we shall never give up, we shall never surrender. There you go. Okay. All right. That is the end of our Rise to Dictators lesson. I hope you enjoyed it and you learned some stuff about these evil, totalitarian, authoritarian leaders, these dictators who will be leading to World War II by taking over places and killing people. Hey, World War II is a lot more simple than World War I, but remember, World War II would not have happened were it not for World War I. Don't forget to do your summary. All right. Thank you guys. I'll talk to you later. Bye.